are here. Hi.
Hi.
This is my attempt to try and start this episode off differently than my usual. Hi, Susanna.
I love your hi, Susanna. It's so
Okay.
nice.
Okay.
But I like all your ways of greeting people. I think it's all good.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So for today's episode, we're talking about pleasure and using pleasure as your guide to your true self. Woo! But before we get started with that, those of you watching on video might notice something a little bit different about mine and Suz's looks today.
Mm, Indeed. We are both wearing glasses. Maria, in solidarity with me, which I'm so appreciative of, wore glasses that she's not the biggest fan of because I'm basically wearing like 15-year-old glasses. I have pretty strong like nearsightedness and I have a sty in my eye, which I find so entertaining to say because it rhymes and not entertaining to experience, however. So it always relegates me off my contact lenses to my glasses. And these are really old glasses because like they're pretty expensive to replace. So it's something that I always put off. Always a reminder when I get an eye thing that this is something I need to do. So yeah, these glasses are like 20 years old. They also make my eyes really small. So they like weird me out and I can't see well in them because their prescription is way too low. So I appreciate you, Maria, for wearing your glasses. I think we both actually look cute though in the end. Like I think both our glasses are charming and adorable. So maybe this is just we felt into a style that we just didn't expect.
Totally, totally. And I just wear mine when I drive at night sometimes. And yeah, I also feel like there's a lot of conceptions around like conceptions. I don't even know if that's a word. But perceptions around glasses. And I think if you've been wearing glasses a long time, there's probably some childhood trauma and things and insecurities around it.
Totally, totally. It's like wearing contacts every day makes me think I have normal vision. Like it makes me forget that this is
Mhm.
a shortcoming, which I don't even like to call it that. But I mean, even that's indicative of how vulnerable I feel about it. And, you know, I could say that like I know that a lot of people or most people with vision myopia, which is nearsightedness, like will say that like they really can't see or like their prescription's really strong. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, my prescription is stronger because it's one of the strongest I've heard of. So I have a story
Mm.
around that too. Like I had the worst vision of everyone in my family. Like I didn't get why. I was always worried growing up that it would just like keep getting worse, but nearsightedness doesn't like it gets worse as you're growing, but it'll stabilize. I don't know if this is a fact, but my optometrists have always been like, it stabilizes in your adulthood. Like it doesn't really change much after that. So that's good. Like it's kind of stayed at the same prescription, but the key issue is just like not having the right prescription for my glasses. And so whenever I have to wear my glasses, I'm like reminded that I can't see. And not being able to see clearly is just such a scary, triggering thing for me. But ironically, it actually used to be a source of comfort when I was younger. I used to like not seeing.
Ooh, tell me
Yeah.
more about that.
Yeah, like I was just thinking into it earlier, but we would go on camping trips with my family and my parents they had me see this like vision specialist. She was like kind of like an alternative vision therapy specialist. So it was kind of neat. She was almost like a therapist and she would also like assign these like it functioned off this like alternative approach to addressing eye problems. So she would assign me these like exercises to relax my eyes and relax the muscles around my eyes. And um, encouraged me to also do as many things as I could without my glasses, because at the time I wasn't wearing contacts when I was younger. And gosh, I think I got contacts when I was like in 8th grade, and it was life changing. But with the glasses, it was like, if you don't wear your glasses, you can still kind of like allow your eyes to do the work, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when you're wearing corrective lenses, there it's being taken care of. Um, so it kind of functions off this idea. It's a long tangent I won't get into, but that like the muscles around your eyes are important to pay attention to, which like factor into how you focus, not just your lens.
Mm.
So anyway, I would go on camping trips without my glasses, or I would have them, but I would not wear them for the whole weekend. And I would just be in the woods, not being able to see, which is wild. You would think that would be the most uncomfortable place to not see, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and we'd go hiking and swimming and all these different things. And I just felt free of having to wear them, and like almost like I could set into this, like, okay, like I can work with this level of eyesight. And there
Mm.
was also this sense sometimes of like, if I got a prescription that was really strong again, I could see everything about, like, I don't know, like having acne as a teenager. Like I would see every blemish on my skin. I could see like everyone's expressions around me. There was almost this feeling of like when you can't see things that well, everything just has this glaze over it, and it's like softer and less confronting. Like if someone's angry and giving
Mm.
you like a stink face, you can't see it anyway.
I love that. Yeah.
So I remember actually working with this, this vision specialist, because like I would kind of be like, maybe I chose not to see throughout my childhood as well, because
Mm.
it was just easier as a really sensitive person for me to walk around with this like blurry world, if that makes sense. The best way I can explain it.
Oh my gosh, completely. I can understand how that would be soothing in some ways. And I feel like that's what happens when people drink. They just like stop seeing what's happening around them from a
Right.
different space, maybe. Like I know, I'm sure it affects your eyes too, but it's just like your brain is slowing down. Um,
Absolutely.
but there's some comfort in that. Like sometimes it's nice to not be so aware of everything that's happening around
Yeah.
you. And I can imagine that being really uncomfortable and scary as a kid. And I'm sure anybody listening or watching that has had to wear glasses at any point in their life can relate to that on some level, and the fear of, oh my gosh, what would happen if I did lose my sight or if I couldn't see fully?
Mhm.
Like that would be really scary. I'm thinking about, and it kind of, wow, this just ties in so beautifully. I love when this happens. So, for one of my birthdays, I can't remember, or maybe it was an anniversary. We went to this restaurant in Toronto called Au Noir. I don't know if it's still open.
Yes, the in the dark, eating in the dark, right?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for stealing my punchline. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no.
No, I'm just kidding. But
I
yeah, it's
outed it right away.
it's basically a restaurant where, yeah, everything, it's all about sensory deprivation. So you can focus on enjoying your food and being present with
Mhm.
your food. And all the servers there are blind because they don't need the light to navigate. And we got the mystery meals. So you don't even know what you're eating. And it was actually a really beautiful way to be more present and in pleasure with your food because
Mhm.
you weren't getting distracted and there wasn't a sensory overload. And of course, there is beauty in seeing, in sight. Of course, it's one of our senses. But when you take away one of your senses, it amplifies the other ones.
Totally.
Um, and there's something really cool about that. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about how much you're focused on using your different senses in your own pleasure and sensuality, and how that's probably very much connected to your journey with your eyesight.
Oh my God. I did not think of that ever. I have not thought of that for my whole life. I mean, since I started my sensual journey, I've never connected that. I'm just blown away right now. Thank you for drawing that connection.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
And
Yep.
look at all the gifts that have come with that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Wow.
very cool.
Yeah, because growing up, I probably did rely on my other senses more, not more. Like, I mean, once I wore glasses and especially corrective lenses, like all of that came into play. But absolutely when like that's kind of been my experience, like when we speak about pleasure in this episode's topic, like it fully ties in. And I was kind of hesitant, as you know, we were going to film this episode a few days ago and I asked for us to delay because I wanted my eye to heal, and I just felt so uncomfortable with the idea of, you know, filming this and speaking on camera. Not that we have to be on camera, but we like to be, and it's great to be. um and just like having to wear my glasses or not wear my glasses, and just overall be in this space of discomfort and vulnerability. But it ended up tying in so beautifully, like things always align for us to our topics. Cause like I've spent this weekend in this displeasure of being back in, you know, my sight not being optimal, and then being reminded of my other senses, like and finding pleasure in other things. And I am, in contrast to how much I kind of resisted sight as like as a child, or just like found comfort in not seeing, apart from the obvious things, like there were struggles around like seeing the chalkboard in class. I remember I always had to have a buddy to sit next to who was hopefully not annoyed with me writing, like copying their notes from whatever they were noting from the chalkboard. It was like a thing. It was like a survival tactic if I couldn't get a seat in like the front row. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So there were things like that that I just kind of brush off and forget about. But but overall, as an adult, that relationship to vision switched into it being so important to me. Like as soon as I got a 20/20 prescription, because one thing I didn't mention as part of the therapy was like always having a lower prescription than I needed to, again, allow my eyes to keep doing some of the work. So as soon as I switched over to full prescription and had to transition to like, wow, I can see everything, every detail. This is so weird. I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. Once I got used to it, I was like, I don't want to lose that privilege, you know? Um,
Yes.
and I'm so aesthetically oriented. Like my background's in design, you know, I'm very creative visually. Like my space has to look a certain way. I like to look a certain way. I like to dress up. I like to do my makeup. Like there's all these aesthetic things that, like, I would say maybe my sense of sight is probably what I focus on the most, or that affects me the most. So yeah, being in a state of lack this weekend with it, this past weekend, which also happened to be my birthday, so it brought up all these other things too, was such a good exercise in like, girl, there are other senses that make you happy. Like you don't need to see clearly to enjoy yourself, enjoy your space. You can still see enough to navigate and do things. I'm just not as comfortable doing them, but I can do them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I'm really just seeing, like, I wonder also if your focus on the aesthetics and even going into design work was somehow connected with your eyesight, like, and how and how much it's affected your whole life and how many gifts have come with it. And I think it's beautiful that you celebrate it and enjoy it. And then, of course, it must be really challenging when you don't have it, as it would be for anybody, to not
Mhm.
be able to see clearly because we're we're so dependent on our eyesight, and we're, yeah, set up to depend on it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then thank you for bringing up your birthday because, you and I connected around your birthday. And I think a lot of people have had, let's call them COVID birthdays
Yeah.
that have not quite been what they hoped that they would be.
Mhm.
Myself included. My birthday was okay. It definitely wasn't what I wanted it to be. And that was hard to detach from for me. Um, but I would love for us to talk a little bit about it because it's comforting to hear that, if you as a listener or viewer had a shitty birthday, to know that you're not the only one, that literally we are all fucking in this together
Yeah.
and going through disappointments collectively.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
we've done a full calendar year now of being in this pandemic, like almost, pretty
wow,
much.
almost, yeah,
Depending on where in the world you are and when it started, but I mean,
yeah,
it kind of started
wow,
in like December of 2019, I think. And most of us went into lockdown, I think around like February, March.
yeah,
So
March, I
we're
think.
approaching a year. So at a time where it seemed like only some of us had a shitty COVID birthday, by now we've all had a shitty COVID birthday. So we can really relate. And then some of us are going into a second shitty COVID birthday, myself
Yeah.
included. And, hopefully by your birthday, things will improve.
April 1st.
Yeah,
Put
I'm
it,
betting on
poor
that.
poor Pisces have to
Pisces
suffer.
Pisces season has to suffer a second time,
Yeah.
but yeah, I absolutely agree for anyone out there who had to, deal with an uncomfortable birthday with not much pleasure. However, maybe you found some unexpected pleasure in it. Like there are things about it that maybe have been surprising, just like we have found some beautiful things through this lockdown and through being in isolation. I know for me, like initially I went through a pretty, down spiral like moment about what my birthday was going to look like, especially once I saw that I had a sty developing. I was just like, great, I'm already facing a birthday that's not going to be as satisfactory. But I was like, I told you I was going to, get dressed up and like maybe go live and connect with some people online and film some videos and like express myself. And then with the style, like all of that just went out the window. And then I just started to come into this space of acceptance. Well, you know what? Like, I have been pretty putting a lot of pressure on myself over the last few weeks. I've been pretty overworked. There are things that I think led to the sty happening in the first place because I like to kind of unpack any physical discomforts or ailments and like how they happened physically, energetically, all of that.
Mhm.
And I just, when I started to accept it, I came into a space where I did end up enjoying the birthday. And it was actually really special because I just accepted that I wasn't really going to do anything but lay around in my house and relax and not pay as much attention to screens. And I felt really loved and supported. Like I had friends and family and people come through in such beautiful ways. And then I also thought to myself, if I had a sty during non-COVID times for my birthday, I would be way more upset.
For
That
sure.
would be way worse. So I was like,
Mm.
actually, it's a good time to have a sty.
If I'm gonna have a sty birthday, I'm glad it's this year.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Well, I'm curious, like, were you able and how were you able to find pleasure um, in a moment or in a day, in a time where you couldn't do all the things that you wanted to?
Mhm. Yeah, so I kind of found that my usual sources of pleasure might have been a bit disrupted. Like, again, a big source of pleasure for me, as maybe anyone can see from like if you follow my Instagram or connect with me online, is tapping into these sensual kind of like dress up, playing around, like filming stuff, taking photo moments. Like, I'm not sure what to call it exactly, just like a sensual self-love session. Um, and I had done it for Valentine's Day, and I was planning to do it for my birthday again. And so I couldn't do that, but there's a lot of little things I tap into as well, like setting up my space to have visual like things that please me. Like, I got a bouquet of, pink tulips for my birthday. And even though I can't see them super clearly, I still love, like, I'm getting so much pleasure. It's almost like when I look at them right now, not even seeing the detail, I can focus more on the color. Do you know what I mean? It's that the
Yes.
color pink is really pleasing to my eye. And so it was more like I would set up my ambient lights and like different color lights and things that I maybe do on a typical evening, especially like as the sun sets. I'll switch into kind of like evening lighting. And again, seeing the lights like more blurred out just connected me more to just the general tone and feel of the room, and
Mhm.
then switching off site to just feel like I would just feel into how comfortable I was in my bed and how nice it was to just laze around in my bed for the whole day for my birthday and like have absolutely zero pressure around doing any group like video calls or have any plans or like nothing, just
Mhm.
completely free to snuggle up in my bed sheets and soothe myself. And then I had a one of my best friends like ordered me a dinner with like a dessert, and I just like enjoyed the heck out of that dessert and wasn't caught up in like filming it too much or taking pictures or like reviewing its aesthetic too much because I couldn't see enough to do that. I still posted it, I think, but I was way more tapped into just enjoying it and enjoying the
Yeah,
taste.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, it was kind of just that and a lot of like meditating and reflecting, just going quiet and finding pleasure in that quiet because I had been like on a treadmill for the last several weeks and realized like I
Mm.
wasn't taking out enough space to really just quiet down, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Do you know what I kind of love? So, and I'll tie this back if it feels like I'm going on a tangent right now. You know, when sometimes you, okay, I think of it this way: when your past self does something to set up your future self in some good way, like when your past self's at the grocery store and like on a whim buys like a slice of cake and like puts it in like the perfect spot in the fridge, and you have a night out and you come back and you open the fridge and you see that slice of cake and you're like, yes, like I love when past Maria takes care of future Maria, or like you lay out your pajamas or something because you know you'll be too tired or whatever it is.
Oh, I love that
Oh my God, I
concept.
get so excited when that happens, especially if I forgot that I did something like that.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like, are you okay if I divulge your age?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Okay.
I'm
So it's like, I love that on some level, like 30, it's almost like 35-year-old Suze, or maybe it's like 36-year-old Suze knew better. It's almost like
mm,
it's like energetically in some way the sky was created, and now 36-year-old Sue's like, I don't need no screens. I don't even need my fucking sight. Like I can be in pleasure by myself, just in like meditation and eating delicious food and just being a witness to some level of beauty, even if I can't see the details of it. And I think there's
totally.
something, yeah, like there's something really beautiful and powerful about that. And like some deep fucking wisdom too.
Oh my God, yes. I
Uh,
love that. I love that. Cause like
yeah.
even in meditating, I was like, it is incredible to imagine, like if you go on a meditative journey, like a guided meditation, and it takes you on a journey, any anything you want, you can conjure up. I mean, I have one, like you've done some, I have one on my channel as well. It's like a sensual meditation. Um, and I was listening to one, I think his name's Jason Seeley. He's so good.
Mm.
And I was just like, I can envision the most like beautiful, crazy, amazing worlds in my mind, you know? And it
Yes.
was, yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that, I'm like sidetracked by this idea of the past self taking care of our future self, and even our future self taking care of our self that hasn't gotten there yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Do you want to expand on that? And I'm just taking these off because it's starting to hurt my brain.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I
go
love
for it.
okay. My eyes aren't used to it. Okay.
I love you for wearing them. Thank
Wow.
you. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love the concept of my past self setting it up to be like, no, Suze, like you don't have to be fully tapped into the aesthetic of things. And as you know, I've been like obsessing over like my branding, my grid on Instagram, all these aesthetic things lately, that that disruption, like I was still reflecting and mulling over it, but it gave me some breakthroughs on it that I don't think I would have had in the same way.
Mhm.
Um, and just defocus things off being so tied to aesthetic. And I was even thinking, this is a bit of a tangent to what you asked, but I was even thinking how, you know, you did your master class recently on like your authentic self, and like the thing that you said about how we're not our body, we're not our looks, we're not our story, like our soul, like we're at our soul level, like something deeper, right?
Mhm.
So I was even thinking that like I'm not just about these senses. Like sensuality is so crucial to me, but I exist just as much and take up just as much space, even if I'm not posting to social media right now, even if I'm not
Mhm.
creating a beautiful designed thing right now, or aesthetic, or grid, or outfit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that tapping into my birthday in a different, more internalized, reflective way that wasn't as expressive maybe reminded me of that. Is just like, okay, Suze, like you need to chill, give yourself space to explore the internal worlds too. It's not like everything I go through I have to put in writing and make into something. Like I'm creating things anyway, but I have to leave room for my own journeys. And so tapping back into meditation was like such a beautiful thing to reconnect with too. And yeah, and I just want to say to the, so what you were asking about like future self taking care of our past self, I just have this thing. I have this, it's, I mean, I don't have this theory. This is a theory that I believe in. Um I have this theory. God, I'm about to like, I'm just like, time isn't linear. This is not my theory. I'm not
What you it's what you believe. It's what you
I believe
believe.
that
Yeah.
time is not linear, right? And so I have had moments where I feel like I felt my future self observing my past self.
Mm.
And it was just like a feeling or knowing. And for example, um, I almost had the, okay, I'll do a more obvious example. When I was driving back to Canada from the US, because I had spent some time there and I left a very damaging relationship there. When I was driving back, um, and you were on the call with me for one of our set one-on-one sessions for that drive back, and it was so healing and supportive. And I just remember like almost like seeing myself, I don't know, like from where I am today, right here, seeing myself driving back, being like, you're gonna be okay. I promise. You're gonna, and you were telling me that too. But it's just like, you're gonna be okay. And I know that because I'm here in the future telling you that. I know it's like, it's a little out there. It's really hard for me to explain, but I just know that I saw myself in that moment from here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I love that. So, well, I'm an energy worker. And you can do energy work. It precedes time and space. So I can work on a past version of myself, of yourself, of anybody. Like I could go back and work on the day you were born and work on you and support you. So it's like, yeah, our concept, and we won't get into this because it's a total mind fuck, but like definitely look it up if it's calling to you. I just wouldn't be able to explain it in a way that would make sense. Like time is not linear, and in fact time is an illusion. So it's all happening at the same time
Mhm.
anyways, right? Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you've ever done a meditation where you've been guided to connect with your future self and they deliver some
Mhm.
kind of a message to you, that is you connecting with the future you, and her having, or him, her, them having some kind of wisdom for you to share. And it's really powerful,
Absolutely. Like,
to do
I
that.
also remember having, I think it came in a meditation actually, not even focused on that particular purpose or outcome, but it just came passively. And it was just this like vision or thought I had about me writing. And I was just sitting in like a space in front of a big, beautiful window, and there was a lot of greenery outside, and I was typing and I was writing a book. And this was before I started writing, like at
Wow.
least a year before I started writing. And I remembered feeling weird about it because I was like, there's no way, like, this is just a random imagining I had or thought. But that's when you have to pay attention because it feels random and inexplicable because it's not necessarily from you right now. Um, and and yeah, it was, I believe, this like literally a hand reaching out for my future self being like, you need to start writing, like you're going to write. And I haven't felt like, I haven't seen myself in that exact moment yet, but I know I will. Like I know I'll be
Yeah,
sitting there typing and it'll hit me and it'll probably feel like a deja vu because I'll be like, I've seen this before, and it'll be that moment, you know?
100%. Yeah. Ooh, for sure. Taking note of the random visions that come through there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Love the tangent we went on.
I actually really love it. This feels like such an interesting episode for talking about pleasure, and not maybe the typical way that we probably wouldn't have talked about pleasure this way if
Mhm.
it wasn't for your whole experience. And something that I share a lot about, um, and teach about, because I share a lot about connecting with your true self and your authentic self, is following that pleasure to connect with her, right? Like, were you any
Mhm.
less connected to yourself for your birthday because you couldn't see?
I think if anything, I was actually more connected.
Exactly, because you
Yeah.
weren't then being distracted by the external and looking to something else. Like you literally went inside and it was like, what can bring me pleasure right now without the screens? Like that's so uncomfortable for probably like 90% of the world's population, to not have a screen
Mhm.
to entertain them in some way, and then to be able to find
Mhm.
pleasure in that, and then finding pleasure without another person being there offering you pleasure is like
Right.
quite the accomplishment, right? And
Totally.
I'm sure a lot of people, when they think about pleasure, they'll think of like self pleasuring and masturbations. Like you can only do that for so long, too,
Mhm.
right? Like eventually your body's going to be like, please stop. I can't anymore or whatever. Especially if you're trying to orgasm and whatnot. I'm sure you could actually be in self-pleasure for a full day and keep touching your body in loving ways. And it would be like, yes, yes, yes. But
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of people self-pleasure in that way.
Mhm.
But that there are so many other ways to just be in pleasure and connect with like your truth and what you need in that moment. And closing your eyes is the best way to connect with your pleasure, because you can then actually tune in with
Mhm.
yourself. And I'm like laughing and smiling because I can't believe how aligned this whole experience you've had is to pleasure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you know what? I mean, there's even times where I don't I don't even go to self-pleasure for periods of time because I'm just not in the space for it, and it almost feels like there's times where I'm really feeling into it and I can really enjoy it and get a lot out of it, and there's times where I would look to it as like an easy fix and then just feel sad when it's over
Yeah.
because it's over, like you can't sustain it. Um and it's like a fleeting thing and it would leave me back to like to square one. So there's times where I actually avoid it because I'm like I need sources of pleasure that like what does my body, mind, and soul really need right now, and you're right, like closing your eyes and tapping in and truly asking yourself, because we're a very pleasure oriented society and like species, but in these fast like quick payoff ways, right? Like we're
Yes.
a very like we like sex is a big thing in our culture, but a lot of it is about getting in there, getting what you want, getting out, like we don't have a lot of discussion and communication around sex being this experience that we enter into with people with like imagine sitting down with someone and being like I remember hearing this from it was like this workshop I went to, and I think it was like an indigenous run workshop
Mhm.
that was teaching sort of like the way that their particular culture and tribe taught about sex and sexuality for people
Wow.
that were coming of age, like in their community. So they were just sharing it and they were talking about how, like, imagine teaching adolescents, like, you turn 18 and you're being taught how to approach someone you're about to experience that with like the utmost respect, with a mutual conversation about what you're each looking for, what kind of pleasure you want, how, like there
Wow.
are times, and I know it's kind of a tangent, but there are times when like say with like a long-term partner or anybody, you might, sleep with them, have sex, and it ends up being not what you wanted, either
Mhm.
because it was like not attentive enough or too quick, like it's just like over, or maybe it was like too intense and rough, or too like soft and low key. And it's not because it's bad necessarily, like this might be a partner that you love and really connect with sexually, but maybe in that particular moment you wanted it a certain way, and we would rarely communicate that, like, or I mean, it depends who, but I think it's
Yeah.
hard for us to communicate that, where you would just be like, this is the kind of sexual experience I'm craving right now, because it's hard to even know. And
Mhm.
we don't have the same type of like sexual interaction every time. Like even when we
Mhm.
self pleasure, it's not necessarily the same every time. Like we look for different stimulants. Like even that changes, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to tap into what it is that we want that's going to bring us pleasure in this particular moment. And we have all our senses to work with, or whatever sense we want to focus on, especially if any of our senses are impaired. We can focus on our other senses.
Mhm.
Um, and it's it's a beautiful thing. And I absolutely agree that it can help bring you closer to who you truly are, because you're
Mhm.
not listening to what society is telling you should bring you pleasure, like a movie or a show or like just a quick orgasm. It's like you're deciding, you know? And the last thing
Totally.
I'll say is like, ironically, with something like screens, which is such an easy go to way for us to get pleasure, it hurts our vision. Like it hurts our sight to stare at screens for too long. And we know
Mhm.
this, but we're
Mhm.
so attached to it. It's so difficult uh, to put it down, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think when you really connect in with your own pleasure, you realize how little you actually need to feel good. Like if you were to ever just sit there and just like touch your arm for a bit and like really be present in it and then put on some beautiful music that just makes your heart flutter, and then put on some like essential oils to smell while you're doing it and just sit there touching your arm like while you sit on the most comfortable couch or like on your favorite pillow.
Mhm.
Wow, that can be such a beautiful experience, and guaranteed you will feel so much more connected with yourself than you ever would putting on a Netflix show. You
Absolutely.
know
100%.
and I feel like we tend to we like to overcomplicate things. Not that we like to, I shouldn't say that. We've been conditioned to. We always feel, again, society wants us to buy more, consume more, get more. So we're not taught to turn to ourselves for the answers. We're taught to look outside of ourselves. And even, how much we prioritize, and you and I were talking about this before we went live, like the color of our hair and how well we dye it versus like how much time and space we're giving ourselves to rest, and the amount of money that maybe we would spend on creating an environment. Like it's a conflicting thing because we are so conditioned to look to the external to express ourselves and show who we are and show our truth.
Mhm.
um, so when you take the steps back and don't get distracted by the outside and just be with yourself and be in pleasure with yourself, then so much more will start to evolve and show itself about who you even are and what's important to you and what you need, because you're also then in some form of stillness.
Exactly.
And that's when the answers and the truths come. I don't even know if all of that made sense, but
No, it totally did.
okay, I'm glad it translated.
Yeah. No, I totally get
Yeah.
that. Cause like, even in any sensual like expression that I do, I know it's very aesthetic in the way that I dress myself, like, but it's all internally guided. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So what's so different from maybe like 5 to 10 years ago is I would have put out photos and videos that would bring me some kind of like external validation, like compliments or like affirmation from people, or yeah,
Mhm.
validation from people. Whereas anything I put out now is like from a space of self pleasure and celebration and appreciation. It's like all on my own terms and for no external validation. Like I don't look for that at all anymore. And it
Mhm.
took me many years to get to that point. But when I'm getting into that space of sensuality, like let's say I'm putting on, like, I'll envision a look I want to tap into that is somehow related to like an energy I want to embody right now. So maybe it's like a very sensual, like, I don't know, like pink, purpley, like flowy, or maybe it's like a badass, like all black, tons of jewelry, like whatever. And then music will like tie into that to guide me as well.
Mhm.
There'll be a whole movement practice, like, or me dancing. The photos and videos I end up with are just like like end result. And it's me having fun and playing with that energy. And it inspires different like things that I end up writing about or expressing attached to that, you know?
Mm.
And so I'll turn it into like a reel or a video or a TikTok or something like that, or even just a series of photos. But there's like hours of internal play and work around that that doesn't get seen. And my hope is just to like inspire people to see a window or opportunity to do the same thing with themselves. And I will never adequately, I shouldn't say never, but it's hard to adequately capture like the whole process.
Yeah.
And like I do intend to put out like a how to have your own like sensual night guide that
I
will
love that.
hopefully like steer it more. But it's like a whole space I come into, you know?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm in pleasure. I'm like expressing myself because I'm at my utmost pleasure because everything's being fulfilled. I'm tapping into all these different things and it can look different for everybody. It doesn't have to look anything like what I'm doing. Like maybe you're in full pleasure by wearing like a super fluffy onesie and baking cookies and dancing around to
Totally.
Christmas music in the middle of June, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
that's your sensual like self coming out, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And you, I love that you're going to put out a guide around that, but people can also work with you one on one to help create that for themselves, just so everyone listening knows. And then for me, like I kind of think about it as moment to moment pleasure. It's like, just like what would feel good to me right now? Do I need to sit down? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to just listen to some music? Maybe I want to read some poetry. But like if we can do that more often and incorporate that into our days, we are going to feel so much more fulfilled and expressed, because that's also going to keep you from overcommitting, of doing things that you don't want to do because it's going to make someone else happy. Because when the choice comes up, you're not going to your brain and being like, what should I do, or what does that person want me to do, or what's the right thing. You're just going into yourself and be like, what would feel good?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's fucking so simple. It's just
Yeah,
like, what would feel good to you? And being able to do it in grander gestures, but also in the little things and in the everyday.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes those things don't necessarily seem like a typical thing that might bring pleasure. Like maybe what would feel really good to you right now is to cry, like let yourself cry, or um I don't know, like you talk about like expressing anger, like punching a pillow, or maybe like having a bath and sitting in the dark. Like it you can come up with such interesting, surprising things when you really tap in and ask yourself what it is that you need. And yeah.
Yeah. And this is like a really small kind of like small example of this, but I think about even when I'm in the shower. Okay. And I don't have like, I'll have a standard shower routine, like wash my hair, put conditioner in, like wash my body. It's pretty much the extent of it. Um, but I also have things to like exfoliate with, and like a dry brush and things like that. Sometimes I'm in the shower and I'll just connect with myself and be like, does my body want some exfoliating today?
Mhm.
And it's like yes or no, and it's like yes, like exfoliating would feel good. So I'm like exfoliate, I'm like, oh yeah, like what else would feel good right now, or even with washing my hair, I'm like, would that feel good? Would Sometimes no, sometimes I actually don't want to wash my hair and it wouldn't
Totally.
feel good. So it's like
Yeah.
in this in the minutia of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we do it with food already, right? Like it's a
Totally.
similar practice because we're always asking what we want to eat, what would feel good to eat, what would taste good, what would feel good, what would not feel good. And it can change day to day. Like one
Mhm.
day you're really craving tons of fruit and a health, like a super big juicy salad, you know.
Mm,
Next day you just want a burger like melting with cheese. Like it's
yeah.
just as varied with anything else we might ask ourselves that fulfills any other sensory, mental, or emotional needs, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of like the pleasure piece, at least for me, it comes from the wisdom of your body more than your mind,
Mm-hmm.
because your mind probably has its like list of things of this brings me pleasure, and that's amazing. You can always go to that. But I think it's always then checking in with yourself, with your body, and being like, okay, like imagining yourself dancing. Like in general, you might be someone who loves dancing, but maybe in a particular moment when you check in with yourself and you close your eyes and you feel into your body, it's like, actually, I don't want to dance right now. I want to meditate, or I want to lie down, or I want to go for a walk, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? And I think sometimes we get so caught up on like, well, this normally makes me feel good, and why isn't it making me feel good? Like it can get frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, because you're changing in every moment and you're going to need different things in every moment. So it's great to have like a list, but at the same time, be doing that deeper check in along the
Yeah.
way.
It's funny because I literally had that happen today where usually like a walk, a brisk walk outside, like does the job and it makes me feel refreshed and good. Sometimes I have to kind of force it because I tend to not get out of my apartment enough. But today I literally stepped outside and started like sweating, feeling stressed. Like I was just like, I don't want to do this. I want to go back inside. And I did. I was just like,
Yay.
a walk's not happening today because I just didn't want to do it today. Like, I mean, I have my with my glasses like and mask on, they fog up. Like there's snow everywhere. I was just like, no. Mm-mm. But like any other day, I might have been like, oh, this feels so good and refreshing. This is exactly what I need. But what I did was just go back home, take off my jacket and stuff, sit down. And I was like, I want to meditate right now for like 20 minutes because I haven't in so long. That's what I need. Like, that's going to bring me
Yes.
pleasure right now, you know?
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. Um, so if you were to give, so yeah, a piece of wisdom about someone's personal self-exploration, like we like to call them, and offer, oh gosh, I'm not even making sense right now. We like to offer some self-exploration that you can do with whatever topic we're covering each episode. What is something that you want to, or what you can offer to others to guide them into pleasure and a deeper connection with themselves through that?
So, what I would actually say is like, I should bring back a highlight. I used to have a highlight on my Instagram, but I took it off for some reason of a practice I did maybe like a year or two ago that was 30 days of acts of pleasure. So for 30
Mm,
days, every day, I did something to bring myself pleasure, something intentional. And it could be, it was allowed to be as minute and tiny or grand as I wanted. And like not even paying attention to any particular sense, just like anything. And I ended up with like a list at the end of it of these 30 things, which I can make available again and share. Um, but I would just say for the week, like commit to doing an act of pleasure every day for a week
mm,
because you'll see, for one, like some of the learnings I had from it were like how reluctant I was to do it sometimes, almost like denying myself that pleasure. um, I couldn't think of anything sometimes, and and then how varied it would be just
mm,
based on the fluctuations of my week and the given day and my mood. So it can really give you a sense of the different things that might pop up. And like you were speaking to, I would sit down and close your eyes and think into what can bring you pleasure today that you can do for yourself, and not take it from any external or like obvious source, you know?
yeah. What would you do when you couldn't think of something?
It was like great to have this like commitment for 30 days and I would post it each day. So I was like, I have to do something.
Totally.
So like even if I couldn't think of anything, I would just sit and think until I finally thought of something, or I would use like I would go to maybe like a more typical thing of mine. Like I think one day when I was struggling, I just decided to put lotion on, and I was like, oh,
Mm,
this is so like this isn't it. Like it's people are gonna be like, what is that? But like it can be so profound to put lotion
oh
on
my
your
God.
body and really feel into it. And so as soon as I did that thing that I brushed off as being like not good enough, um, it always turned into something beautiful and soothing. So I
Mm,
always, at the end of the day, I did always think of something, because no matter what, it is something that is accessible to you constantly, no matter what situation you're in, where you are, there's always something. It could be looking at the sky.
totally. And I think, yeah, if you're recommending that, is that what your recommendation is to do 30 days?
I would do like 30 days can be a big commitment, I guess. So for this, I would say a week. But if you're down to do the 30, like hell yes, do it.
Yeah. So, and if you are struggling with what would bring me pleasure, just ask yourself, how can I bring pleasure to the mundane? How can I make this the one of the things that I do every single day more pleasurable? Like maybe it's when you make your coffee, like you actually do one of those designs in the milk, or you take out some
Mm,
cinnamon and add it, or like shred some chocolate bits onto, you know what I mean? Like just make that more pleasurable.
totally.
And there's a lot of joy in that too. And yeah, I would say that would be my kind of guidance is how can you bring pleasure into the everyday moments and the simple things, and checking in with yourself and asking that question, how can I make this more pleasurable? And what would give me pleasure? Oh, that's so great. I
I
love
loved it.
those.
Yeah, so good. Ugh.
So good. Well, thank you. It was very pleasurable talking about pleasure with you.
I agree. I agree. I feel pleased to the max right now.
Same. I really feel good. And I hope that this episode impacted you all positively in some way, and that you have some inspiration on ways you can bring pleasure in, or just doing it. And let us know if you do. We always love hearing
Mhm.
from you. Instagram's always a great way to connect with both of us, at Sue's Bubs, or SuzBubs, or at Maria Juzwin. Just send us a DM. Let us know how
Mhm.
it's going. If you want some added guidance around it, we're always happy to talk about pleasure because it's literally pleasurable. So, yeah, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next poll and next episode coming out soon.
Yay. Thank you so much.